The woods of southeast Michigan. When I was very young, from the ages of 5 through 12, my two brothers, one was a year older than me, and the other two were 2 years younger than me, and I would play in the woods our neighborhood was built in the middle of. There was a lot of scary stuff out there in those woods. I never put all of the pieces together into one larger picture until a couple of months ago while talking to my sister about the story that has maps and boxes in it. She is 7 years younger than me, so she was not along for most of the stuff. For the record, as the title says, we live in southeast Michigan. I've got a pack of smokes and a pot of coffee, and nothing better to do right now, so if anyone is reading, I guess it's time to remember some stuff. I've repressed a lot. When we were little, my brothers and I, along with a number of neighborhood children, were obsessed with the woods. We did all of those awesome little boy things, like making maps and building forts and climbing trees. For the first couple of years, there were only a few houses in the neighborhood. The three of us mostly just played together. We were inseparable back then. The first time that things got weird, we found an old pickup truck crashed against a tree deep in the woods. Our township is pretty old, and the place where our neighborhood resides had at one point been a major dumping ground and a couple of local businesses. I think it was back in the 20s or 30s or so, from what I can recall. The truck itself had a lot of things inside of it, including some suspicious fibers like decayed clothing and a terrible odor. We told our dad, and he went out there the very next day. After that, we were not allowed in that part of the woods anymore, and yet we still went there all the time anyways. A little while later, a buddy down the street of mine and I started exploring downriver from there. We found, over the next several months, dozens of boxes, all of them containing mundane items. One of them had a crap load of old Penthouse magazines inside of it. We said that we would come back later with flashlights and get them. When we came back, they were gone. Now, that sounds mundane, but it becomes relevant later. Now, there was some strange wildlife in this area. I always thought I was crazy, but it turns out that yes, there are wild peacocks running around in my old neighborhood. I have no idea how that even happened. But those are not the creatures I dream about all these years later. No, that would be the dogs. We had a pack of wild dogs running around. Big, muscular, wild dogs that could not be caught. They had a leader, an alpha if you will, who was bigger and meaner looking than the rest. He was solid white, with red eyes, which I now know means he was albino in all likelihood. They would watch us play, and when we noticed, we would climb trees and wait until they lost interest to go kill a raccoon or something. Then one day, there was another kind of animal down there watching us in the tree with them. A dirty old man with a big, scraggly beard and jet black hair. He would be sighted around the neighborhood, but the cops could not or would not do anything about it. My dad chased him off of our lawn with his .22 a couple of times. There was a park at the end of our neighborhood. Nothing special. Just a fake beach with a couple of benches and a swing set. It was where the river bent around and hit another subdivision's backside. We would spend all summer fishing on that strip of gravelly sand every single year. The woods had a trail in them that led to that other neighborhood, and sometimes we went down it just for kicks. There were a lot of old, weird structures built off the trail, like sheds made of packing pallets and 100-year-old tree forts. We were young, adventurous lads, so we were constantly snooping. God, I have no idea how we were not all murdered by the end of things. I remember one time, my older brother decided he would go for a swim a little bit up the river from where I was fishing. He got down to just his underwear and jumped in. A few minutes later, he is shouting and I am running for him. He is hurriedly dressing. I look out. There was a little island-like spot in the middle of that part of the river, covered in cattails. And standing amid them was some guy. I could only see the beard, but like I said, things begin to come together when you reflect years later. So, now we hit the part where I describe myself a little bit. I'm of average build, haven't ever been terribly handsome, and have had sleeping problems my whole entire life. I would sneak out of the house a lot late at night and go for little strolls around the neighborhood and the woods surrounding them, which is funny because I am terrified of open blinds after dark. I'm not afraid of the actual dark, just windows people can stare at me through. That's exactly what happened one night. My bedroom was on the second floor of the house, next to my little brother's. I had forgotten to close the blinds before dusk one night and got up to shut them. I had a habit of looking down when I had to do that out of paranoia. This time, the blinds got stuck. When I looked up to fix them, there he was, with his face pressed up against the glass, the man with the beard. I screamed, and my dad came running, and my mom called the cops. My little brother woke up because he stomped off across the roof and jumped. It was a rainy day, and my yard tended to turn to soup due to septic issues, so when my dad found the splatter from him landing in his footprints, he was convinced. I didn't go outside at night for years after that. I guess I bring up my looks because I looked a lot worse when I was younger. I sometimes wonder why this guy had such an interest in us, but like I said, things got a lot clearer with time. He was clearly some kind of disturbed individual, and probably homeless. I have always had this recurring dream of me running through the woods naked with those dogs, which, believe it or not, is also an actual memory. I woke up to that a couple of times. See my first post. Shit gets a little weird and fuzzy for me around this period, which was when I was something like 8 years old. I had a sleepwalking issue. I still do, so had is the wrong word. I would wake up naked and covered in mud all of the time. It got so bad, my parents started deadbolting my door and windows. Now, I also understand it was because of that guy. All of our rooms were similar, and my parents got a motion sensor to monitor me and my sleepwalking problem. One night, I woke up in the woods to me being carried. We were not far away from my house at all. I could still see my neighbor's house. I screamed like I've never screamed before in my entire life, and it startled him. He dropped me. I would probably be dead right now if not for that. I started sharing a bedroom with my little brother, and my older brother was moved upstairs into my old room. Now, at this point, the cops were always at our house and always in our neighborhood. We lived in a quiet suburb during the early 90s, so this sort of thing was largely unheard of around our area. It was big news around the town. So one day, my brothers and I are clearing out weeds to build a structure back in a different part of the woods. We all had favored weapons that we had found and claimed were for defense, but we really only used them to whack weeds out of our way. The dogs and us were on friendly terms by then. My little brother is whacking weeds next to me with his weapon of choice, a 2x4 with a bunch of nails on one end that he found in a drainage ditch, when he suddenly goes stiff and pale. I ask him what's wrong, and he just snaps at me to not move. My little brother is an engineer now, and he is absurdly good at every single thing he does. He holds his board up by my face suddenly, and there is a loud bang. I'm confused. He turns it around, and there is a bullet inside of it. He points, and there, off in the distance, a guy is running away. I ask where our brother is, and he laughs and points. He is running across the field after the guy, screaming, a pitchfork in his hand. We lost sight of the dude and neighborhood over. Now, my little sister was very young at this point. My parents watched her like hawks because weird shit was starting to go down when she was an infant. One night, my dad just goes running past my bedroom in his underwear, baseball bat in hand, and goes charging outside the front door. It's one of the only times I've ever heard him swearing. From what my mom says, the guy was peeking through the slightly cracked blinds at my sleeping baby sister. I never let her go anywhere out of my sight when she got old enough to play with us, and I only told her about some of the stuff very recently. Now, that neighborhood buddy from earlier and I, we got bold. We went where we had seen the boxes again, even though we were not supposed to. There was this weird dirt path off by the dirt road on that end of the neighborhood that went absolutely nowhere. We looked around and eventually found a steel drum with stuff from a fire made of clothing and toys surrounded by mattresses. We were kind of freaked out at first. Then we saw the boxes. Now I know that they were the same boxes because I looked inside. I recognized the magazines. We came back later that night. Now, when we returned, we did so with flashlights and backpacks and little fishing utility knives. We were not very smart. We approached with our flashlights off as we could see the fire burning and hid behind some brush. There were a bunch of guys there who all looked similarly disheveled in stereotypical hobo fashion. They were drinking and singing in some foreign language. I remember none of the words or anything even close, so I will likely never know what language they were using. We did not stick around for long. I got yelled at for being out that late, and rightly so. It was stupid of me. Now, I do believe paranormal things have happened around me, whether that's stupid to think or not. However, I believe this was just a case of some weird homeless men living in the woods or something. Were there weird little fetishes made of twigs all over the woods? Yes. Does that make me think there was some sort of cult? No. I just wanted to state that I think this was just creepy guys, nothing extra special or organized. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, and I appreciate the suggestion, but frankly, we could not afford to move house. That may seem pretty dumb to some of you, but in a country where not even healthcare is something that most families can afford, what makes you think that we could just up and leave jobs behind and everything? I wish. They were not the best parents all of the time, but goddamn do I respect my parents and their massive amounts of hard work and dedication and love. Flash forward a year or so, we decided to get a little bit wacky in our fortress design because someone or a few somebodies started wrecking them up. We dug a humongous pit in the ground, something like 10 by 8 feet that was a good 6 feet deep, and put a bunch of scrap wood supported by posts over it and the tarp, and then we buried it. We made this really cool hatch that we grew grass on top of to hide it, and now we had a secret bunker. We had fun in that fort all summer long. One afternoon in late summer, both of my brothers just wanted to play Super Nintendo, so I decided I will go it alone, just to put some new stuff in I'd found in the fortress. I'm just down the street when I hear a loud thwacking noise over and over again. I decided to keep my distance and got out the toy binoculars I was going to stash back there. I was bringing tools and scraps of wood I had found. I could not get a good look through the tree line. Then I heard a loud boom. I did not go back there that day, but the next day, my brothers and I went to our fortress. Someone had cut a huge tree down right onto it, destroying it completely. We picked a new spot in the woods, because now we could not go back there, as our parents had somehow found out. This was when I was 10 years old or so, and shortly before forts stopped being our thing. I grabbed up some old baloney from the trash to feed to the dogs, and headed off into the woods. We had started building bike trails with jumps and ramps back by our latest fortress, which should have probably finished when that bearded man started and killed us all. God, we were such idiot children. Like I said, we should have gotten killed several times over. Anyways, I went back to the bike trail to see what was up today, and my older brother was already there. He looked, upset. I followed him back because he would not tell me what was up. When we got back there was stuff written in red paint all over the place, on our stuff and on the trees. I said something like, "Damn, kids from the other neighborhood are painting up all of our stuff." My older brother pointed out that there were flies all over the paint. It was not paint, it was blood. I did not believe him until he walked with me up to where our fortress had been. One of the wild dogs was down in the pit. His throat had been slit. Now, this is the summer where forts stopped being cool because of that last bit. We stopped going into the woods. We should have years earlier, but you know how dumb children can be. We felt like nothing could happen to us. We switched things up and went fishing in the park a lot more. A couple of houses were right across the river, and we only went in the early afternoon, so we felt pretty safe. We avoided the trails, and that part where the river bends and that island was. My granny got even more concerned and begged our parents to find a way to move. They said they couldn't move without significant financial help, which nobody could give. Besides, my father had built that house himself. I think the guy got smart because we did not see him for the rest of the summer and quickly forgot everything about all of the previous events. Like I said, idiot children. I was at the park fishing with my sister one afternoon, and as I looked down into my tackle box to change lures, she made a little yelp. I looked up, and she was hiding behind me. I asked her what had happened. Like, had she had a bug bite her or something, or maybe a bee or a wasp? and she just shook her head. She did not speak much when she was little for some reason. Now she talks so much it gets grating at times. I crouched down and saw that she was crying, so I packed up our stuff and we headed home. She said she'd seen some guy in the tree line staring at me, and I decided I did not want to go into the park anymore. I started being an indoors kind of boy, got into magic and D&D, and we'd all been reading comics and playing video games for forever anyways, so I guess we finally smarted up. No more adventures for a few years, and only a couple of sightings around our yard of Mr. Beautyface. Flash forward a good 8 years and only a few sightings, and we come to me getting in a lot of trouble. I had been doing drugs for a bit a couple of years prior, but had been clean for a good year at that point. I woke up one night from the dream about the dogs, which I had not had in years, and I was in the woods by the park. Thankfully, I was fully clothed and on my feet. I must have been sleepwalking once again. I got my bearings for a bit, and then I heard something. I heard some laughing. Not just one voice either. Muscle memory kicked in. I'd been down the trails in these woods 1,000 times, and I was almost to the other neighborhood, where a good friend of mine who had helped me get clean lived. She knew about the man in the woods. She said she had seen him, although I cannot prove that one way or the other, and her back door was always open for me, because I sleepwalked to her house all the time. I booked it. I looked back, and there was the guy. He was chasing me. I ran straight through a bramble because I knew it would shave off time and delay him, and I got caught up by it, but he did not follow me. He just screamed and got tangled up. The woods ended in a huge park with a soccer field in my pal's neighborhood, and when I got to that field, I just screamed and ran across it with all of what I had left. There was a single street light opposite the park, and I just stood in the circle of that light as house lights all clicked on. I looked back and saw him standing in the tree line, and he tipped his head up and just walked back into the woods. I did not stick around, even though there was an old lady yelling at me to stop, and I proceeded to have a mental breakdown at my buddy's house. Now, couple that last part about multiple voices laughing with the part about the weird campsite from earlier, and I think that maybe they all just look similar enough that it was never just one guy. Or maybe one had taken a particular interest, because the last time that I saw him was the weirdest one by far. My parents had gotten divorced when I was in high school, and my dad had moved to Georgia, about 30 minutes west of Atlanta. I got sent to live with him after my complete mental breakdown. I know, 20-year-old guy still living with his folks and all that. I had trouble getting my life together. I moved into an apartment shortly after, because I got on my first really serious boyfriend. We lived in an apartment down the road from my dad's place, and I worked at an Arby's on the other end of town. I did not have a car, but I like walking anyways, so I just walked to and from work all the time. Our apartment complex was the only building on our street, which was 3 miles long. I always knew I was almost home when I saw the traffic light at the top of the hill, which was a mile uphill from our apartment. One night, I got to the top of the hill and felt relieved. It was 1 a.m. and I was tired. I started my second wind jog down the hill and got a bad feeling. The streetlights on our road were almost a quarter of a mile apart, and I stopped underneath the first one so I could catch my breath and just observe my surroundings. I looked back up the hill, as I often did, and saw the shadow of a man running down the hill. I decided not to figure out what that was all about, and I booked it all the way home. The car swerved and almost hit me, because at that point, I was trying to flag it down, as it was the only car I had seen. I looked back, hearing tires squeal. They almost hit the guy, and he was right underneath the light I had just been under. It was him. He gave me that same hood tip, and just sauntered off into the swamp by the road. I ran home so quickly, and then I never saw him again. See, now that I'm thinking about that guy in particular, I'm wondering if some other things from my youth are connected. A girl died in the woods behind my elementary school, which was across the street from my neighborhood. A man kept being sighted around the school grounds, and a rough description of him was put into a sketch on a poster all around town. But I could not for the life of me remember what he looked like. Someone tried to drown one of the neighbor's kids in the park, grabbed him and held him underneath the water until someone entered the park, shouted at him, and he ran. Now that I think about it, I wonder if it was the same guy/guys. I have some research to do. I've kept detailed journals my entire life, and they are somewhere in a box in my basement. I need to consult them if I can find them. Can someone cap or archive or whatever this thread for me? If I find my journals, it would be easier to pick it up from here without retyping it all. How did a 2x4 stop a bullet? He was very far away, clearly a good shot on top of it, and I never saw the gun, so it might have been some crappy thing he found in the gutter for all I know. Like I said, the guy was probably homeless. My little brother, since his ability to block a bullet with a piece of wood like that has been mentioned, is terrifying. He's a good 3 inches taller than me, and I am not short, and he has excelled at everything he has ever done. This includes the firing range, as our father insisted that we learn gun safety while we were pretty young, which is probably why he was able to recognize the gun and know that he was able to do that. Frankly, it's a good thing for all of us that he is such a good man. He is the best shot I've ever seen, and terrifyingly smart. Okay, so I remembered a couple of details that actually escaped me earlier. The man was seen by several of my neighbors over the years, if I didn't mention it, and still, he was somehow never apprehended. Or if he was released pretty quickly and easily. I can't confirm which, I don't think, although I am researching the matter. I remember a detail about those tunnels I mentioned. A neighbor's kid fell down one right in front of me. I have no idea how I forgot about that. He scrambled out and never wanted to talk about it ever again. I never looked down it again after he got out. I keep wanting to mention my hometown by name, which is hard not to do, but I don't want anybody to figure out where this was and go into the woods looking and end up getting hurt. If that happens, I will feel immensely guilty. I'm glad nobody has asked that I do that. I won't. My little brother just texted me. I don't talk to my older brother much these days. He moved to North Carolina with his girlfriend, and we kind of spent most of the last 5 years butting heads over some old family stuff. We are mending it now, but it's slow when 2 stubborn jerk-off idiots start to argue and try to fix it years later. Anyways, he says our older brother actually got grabbed by him by one of our forts. He had the rusty pitchfork he found in a pile of garbage with him that he used to work on fort stuff and looked like some kind of badass Poseidon. I guess he stabbed the guy pretty bad in the leg and he limped off into the woods, but my brother did not follow, and he took years to talk about it. I guess it shook him up pretty badly. And my little brother actually just hit me with another little bit of information I did not know about. I guess he was alone in the woods one summer. He doesn't remember when it was, just that he was really young. And the dogs jumped out of some brush and were growling at one of the hobos who was approaching him. That seems weird, because I always figured they were not truly wild, and were the hobos pets or attack dogs or something. It would explain their pleasant demeanor towards us when we fed them, although I suppose any creature will act nice if it knows there's a free meal on the line for them. This happened to a buddy of mine about 4 to 6 years ago in rural Michigan. I could not pinpoint the date. My buddy, let's call him Earl, is half Native American on his mother's side. Earl does not grow up on the res, but he goes there from time to time for family functions and parties. He is hiking with another guy out in bumfuck nowhere in this res, about a mile off the road, when they come across this terrible smell. They do not recognize it as the smell of death immediately. It fucking stinks, that's all they know. They come to this clearing, and the sight is just horrifying. There's like 50-something deer laid out in a spiral around this boulder. Each deer was male, ripped in half, with the ass facing the head and entrails hanging out. The horns were also all removed and stacked in a pile around this boulder. The boulder was not unnatural. It was a pretty common glacial deposit type shit, but it was apparently rather large. They immediately get on the phone and call the res police and DNR, since they are the closest law enforcement. In the meantime, they go back to town, meet with the cops, then go back with the cops to show them where the rock and the deer are. They arrive, and sure enough, all of that shit is still there. The situation freaks out the res cops and the local elder, who have no idea how or why such a thing happened. The DNR guys are just as confused, and initially think Earl and his friend or the res people did it as some kind of sick prank. However, the deer bodies do not show any tool marks for being sawed or ripped in half. It seems like they were just ripped in half by hand, but there are no other broken bones on the animal or any real signs of a struggle, save for the ripped out antlers. The DNR guys and the res do some digging to see if it's some sort of Native American ritual or whatever, and they come up with nothing. The elder does not know what is going on. There are no legends or rituals that match up with what happened, as far as he knows. The DNR guys chalk it up to poaching or cult activity, and eventually find people who are willing to clean up the site and do a little bit of digging as to what kinds of clues were left behind. In total, I think they found 57 individual male deer corpses, all killed by blood loss and extreme trauma, most of them relatively fresh, no more than a few days. They were not eaten, not even by scavengers. No signs of coyotes, buzzards, nothing but the maggots. They also found signs of previous deer antlers from years past. The DNR had a hard time finding people to volunteer to go to collect the corpses after the investigation was done, for obvious reasons. They set up trail cameras and kept an eye on the site, but never caught anyone or anything. I doubt that my buddy was lying. He was so shaken up just by retelling the story that he could not sleep that night. I would like to visit the place with 6 or a dozen guys with NODs and rifles just to see what's going on, but my buddy did not tell me about where exactly it happened. I'm actually going to hang out with him this weekend. I will try to tease the information out of him, and either post the location here or go and take a look for myself. Even if it turns out to be a nothing burger, it's an excuse to go camping. I had some weird stuff happen to me when I was much younger. My uncle invites me to this corral to check on our horses. My uncle had an old school Harley Davidson and always got a kick out of hanging out. The corral was about 20 minutes from our town, but it was a spectacular ride. The corral itself was pretty damn huge, at least 100 acres. Multiple families kept their horses and cattle there. It was owned by the state, I think. I heard many stories about this place. Back in the 1900s, rich Spaniards buried their gold there so the revolutionary forces would not steal it. For several decades, people went there to look for said gold, and there were holes everywhere. My uncle and me, we went digging once too, but we never found anything. So far, it's a normal day. We watered and fed the horses, and it was time to head back home. It's still midday. As we were riding down the dirt road, we got to this curve. As we were going around the curve, an old 70s station wagon revealed itself. I specifically remember the tires pushing away the sand. Then we saw a bunch of people, about 10 if memory serves me right, both males and females of all ages. They were standing below this huge tree. I have no idea what they were doing. It looked like a funeral. We were like, what the fuck? My uncle was going slow because of the curve, but we remained fixated on those people and them at us. We were staring at each other like lasers. There was an old lady, and she nodded at us, black veil and all. We cleared the curve and left. My uncle says, what the fuck was that, and what were they doing? I don't know. Are they even allowed to be there? Let's go back and check what's up. I've heard about horses gone missing. My uncle turns back and again goes down the curve. I didn't think much of it, just maybe a bunch of people praying, I don't know. As we clear the curve, there is nothing, no people, no station wagon, no tracks in the sand, nothing. We look at each other silently. He quickly turns, clears the curve, and bolts out of the area. We have never returned or spoke about it until now. I was probably 9 or 10 years old when this happened. I was in my room at night. I can't go to sleep, so I lay on my bed for what feels like hours. I start getting scared, thinking about ghost shows on the Travel Channel. Here's the room setup. My bed is in the middle of the room, and my closet door is about 5 feet from the edge of my bed. The door to the closet is closed, and my school outfit for the next day is hanging on the doorknob. I am trying to sleep. My clothes on the doorknob start moving a bit. I'm not facing them, but I hear the sound of them swinging. The sound gets louder, as the clothes swing more violently. I am petrified at this point. My only hope now is that one of my dogs is the culprit. Over the course of a minute, I work up the courage to glance at the clothes. No dogs or anything, just the clothes swaying wildly. There is nothing there to propel them. I am in sheer terror. The swinging lasts for around 5 minutes or so. I am under the covers, waiting for the worst. I eventually managed to fall asleep underneath the covers. That was one of the worst nights I ever had as a child. Not the only weird thing that happened in that house, but definitely the worst.